Hi everyone, welcome to episode 34 of the Future of Work show. Now, if you've been with us over this past year, you know that we've been having conversations around how technology is going to impact the way we work. We've had conversations around artificial intelligence, robotics. We've also had conversations around the changing nature of leadership itself and how human resource practices are going to change. But for the time being, given that we're going through an extremely challenging time, we're going to focus on topics that really are designed to help all of us, me included, navigate this really, really difficult time. And that brings us to the topic of today, finding calm in anxious times. And I have with me a special guest, Nitya Shanti. Hi, Nitya, you're on air.
Oh, here we are. Good to be here.
So Nitya is an ex-monk and spiritual teacher. I first met him actually when he came to our organization to do a workshop with the top leadership. But we've stayed friends since, and it's been, I think, about a decade now, Nitya. Can you believe
like
it?
That, close to a decade. Yeah, close to a decade. Amazing.
Such a long time. So a little bit about Nitya. Besides being an extremely popular teacher, he's also a corporate facilitator and have the equilibrium through regular time. So he's really the best person I could think of for inviting for our conversation today. What some of you might know about him is that before he chose the lifestyle of a monk and then a spiritual teacher, he was an MBA like many of us. So he went to XLRI, and I think you just started your corporate career when you realized that you wanted to do something else, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course,
for 4, 5, 6 months, something like that, not too long.
Yeah, something like that. And so now 20 years, you've been, a spiritual practitioner and teacher. So really happy to have you on the show, Nitya. Thank you so much for coming.
It's good to be here, and I'm remembering whenever I'd come to your home, at least some years back, the rescue Rani, I think her name was Rani, right?
Oh, yeah.
Comment on how she would greet me continuously for 10 minutes. Rani loved me more than you because she greeted me for 10 minutes. You only said, "Hi, Nitya, good to see you."
I think you would have been rather annoyed if I had greeted you for 10 minutes. But she was a beautiful soul. And I still remember the poem you wrote when she passed because...
did I write a poem? I don't remember that.
Yeah, you did. You sent a little poem about, she came as surprisingly as she left. And it was really comforting for me. I read it many times. So thank you for that as well. So Nitya, here we are in, frankly, some of the most challenging times that I've ever experienced. And I think the summer of 2021 is definitely one of the most cruel, most harsh summers for many of us. And, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, it's really hard to be untouched by all the suffering all around us. Now, there are some ways to deal with suffering, like completely blocking it out or, just sort of saying that you're not going to engage with that. But I was wondering if it's possible to have both an open heart and still maintain your equilibrium. And if that's possible, how does one even find that place?
Yeah, what a great question. And, like we say things like work-life balance, but actually it's not a noun, it's a verb, it's balancing. So similarly, it's not equilibrium, it's equilibrating. And it's the invitation to continuously keep coming back to our center. Any true spiritual practice will help you guide you back to your center. Center is some thread of truth that you can come back to again and again and again, that's reliably there at all times. Now, that simple truth could be your breath, coming back to your breath. It could be to just the reality or the emotional tonality at this point, without liking or disliking it. Coming to witness consciousness, and also allowing ourselves to dive deep into whatever we're experiencing. So the way to equilibrate is to keep coming back, stepping out of the endless imaginings. And imagination has its own place, there's nothing wrong with imagination. But getting hypnotized by our own imagination. And de-hypnotizing ourselves, coming back to the reality of now. One of my teachers, Byron Katie, had gone to someone's house, and as she entered the gate, 3 big dogs came charging at her. Now, the normal thing would be to get really afraid. She's a middle-aged woman who's quite short, and now she's more than middle-aged. and these 3 dogs, and she thinks in her mind, the good news is they're not here yet. I mean, that's a real example. See, the thing is, the imagination is they'll come and pounce on me and they'll bite me. But they're not here yet. They're charging, they're racing, and she's just present. And you know, dogs are so sensitive. They came, they immediately figured out she's not a threat. They sniffed her up, and they accompanied her back to the house. So we often catastrophize, in my experience at least, I've realized that life is actually kinder than the stories we tell. I remember not doing homework in school and thinking of what a terrible situation. I literally thought the teacher was going to pull my pants down from the class. But she was upset and she told me to be mindful next time. And it was never as bad as I imagined it to be. And I'm finding again and again that reality is kinder than the stories we tell. Nothing troubles us but our own imagination. So for me, the current crisis and all that's going on is an invitation. Yes, it's difficult. We're not denying that. Yes, it's painful. We're not denying that. It's an invitation for us to upgrade our operating system of how we approach life, how we think of life, our assumptions about life. When it hurts, like for example, you're not able to find your way in a city, and you're really angry with the city because your map says there should be a road, but there isn't a road because the map is not the terrain. We have a certain map about how life should be. We already had a map of how our life will pan out, but turns out the terrain is not matching our map. Now you can get upset with the terrain, or you can update your map. And so I look at these as opportunities. Yes, they're painful, but they're in fact, there's no other way out but to update your map. And as I get more and more accurate map of reality, the less and less there is friction and suffering. And eventually I transcend all maps. And that would be an awakened life. When you're not relying on maps and assumptions anymore, you're fully integrated with the fabric of life.
Wow. Are there like simple tools which say people who aren't regular spiritual practitioners, who haven't been, say, on some kind of path for much of their lives, like what is it that you can do here and now that maybe you've never done before that will help you where you are today?
Yeah. So first of all, I would take out this concept of regular spiritual practitioner, not even spiritual or not. The fact that right now you are able to see and hear Shalini and me, that's spiritual. Why is it spiritual? Because there is some spirit looking through your eyes, right? And hearing through your ears. You're a completely spiritual being, whether you like it or not, whether you do a spiritual practice or not. You are essentially awareness and love. My first website, they asked me what link it should have. And I came up with the link, Loving Silence. That's no longer the website, but it's so powerful, Loving Silence. And for me, that kind of summarizes it. Silence is awareness and love. So you love the silence. So the main point is, instead of loving ideas, which is fine, ideas have their own place, nothing wrong with ideas. Shift from conscious mind to subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is feelings. So get out of and in fact, much of our programming, if you look at the television, what they're actually doing every day by telling you the numbers again and again and again is they're programming fear. Why are they programming fear? Why would they do that? It's very simple. People get hooked on by fear, and they'll come back again and again to watch those TV programs. If they were to talk about good news all the time, people will not get hooked on, because our survival mechanism is so strong that we get hooked on by bad news and fear, right? So it's very simple marketing. You talk about the bad, we'll not talk about all the good news, all the amazing work doctors are doing, all the amazing work NGOs are doing. They're not going to talk about that. Once in a while, they'll mention it. Most of it is going to be about fear, how bad it is, how bad it is, how bad it is. But that's how people get hooked. That's how people come back again and again and again. You have to understand the deeper psychology behind this, right? So we need to step out of the fear narrative, step out of the thinking into the feeling, and allow ourselves to fully feel what we are feeling. What I've learned in my years of practice is my body and mind can tolerate any feeling. It is designed to feel, right? So whether it's a panic attack, anxiety attack, absolute grief, doesn't matter. My body and mind can process it. It's got to move through me. And so to shift from assuming yourself to be this person or that person, corporate person, in fact, we're doing this on LinkedIn, I really invite people to approach this topic as a human being. Even this mask of being a professional and being a this and a that, take out all these masks. You cannot have transformation as long as you have masks, right? So the whole journey is coming really raw. This situation is forcing us to be raw. Like you said a little while back, you had other things lined up for this month, but you realize that those topics are far disconnected from where we are. We need to get really raw right now. People have lost loved ones, they've lost livelihood. They don't know what's going to happen next. And that's really real and raw. So can we get real and raw now, right? And can we come to awareness? So the practice would be to allow yourself to feel, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling in the heart right now? What am I feeling in my legs right now, my hands right now? And even momentarily shift to that. It's going to be painful, it's going to be unpleasant, but the way out is actually through. And by allowing yourself to have the capacity to feel what you're feeling instead of dodging your feelings all the time. Every night at 10:30, I'm offering a meditation session these days. And people join. And I just get them to experience their experience and be with it instead of diverting away from it, distracting away from it. And the way out is actually through. So 3 levels of mind are conscious mind, which thinks, subconscious mind, which feels, and superconscious mind that just knows, that just is. And our journey in this life, the way I understand it, is to go from conscious to subconscious to superconscious mind to never mind. And life will not rest until it, but life is actually not interested in our comfort. Life is interested in our growth, and life is interested in our awakening. And so the faster we get that, the smoother we will go through this. As long as you think, oh, this has not happened, that has not happened, it's messing up my timetable, my plan for life, you're going to keep on suffering. Because life is not here to pander to your arbitrary ideas of how life should be. It's about updating our map and eventually transcending all maps.
Wow. So now even take me a while to process that. So what you're saying is that, to deal with or to maintain your center when there's so much anxiety all around, the process is to feel what you're feeling completely.
And give yourself
and
some space.
feel it, right, and across different levels of your being, your thoughts, your emotions, and your being per se, your at the core. But
allow yourself to be impacted. Yeah, just to complete that. Allow yourself to be impacted. Beautiful thing I read some time back is when you allow yourself to be impacted, you're vulnerable, right? So like, for example, you're sharing some challenge you're going through. Instead of just saying, oh, that's your karma and I can't deal with it and I'm already overwhelmed. To allow me to be impacted, to allow myself to feel your joy and feel your pain and feel your sorrow. When I allow myself to be impacted again and again and again, I discover my invincibility. That all kinds of life experiences can move through me, but I'm actually untouched. One of the best quotes I ever read by Pema Chodron, she says, I am the sky, everything else is weather. The reason we do any spiritual practice or even listen to a talk like this is to start dehypnotizing ourselves from believing I'm so vulnerable and so weak and so, no, you're none of that. You're the sky within which all these things are going to come and go. And very quickly, I want to say my friend, a monk from Nepal, had gone to give a talk show. He was invited to a talk show. And on his way out, a family approached him and said, we are so inspired by your talk. And our son last year lost his vision. Some accident happened. He's blind in both eyes. And he's inconsolable. And what would you say to him? And this monk simply said one phrase. He said, yes, vision is impermanent. And it sounds like a very rude thing to say to someone who's lost their vision. But that was the only thing that gave him solace. He said, oh my goodness, that's so true. I never thought of it like that. Everyone's going to lose their vision sooner or later. Either by old age or disease or death. You're going to lose your vision. Vision is impermanent. And this poor me mentality he had, poor little me, that instantly vanished. So there was a course correction which happened in one statement. Yes, vision is impermanent. And he stopped being a victim in that moment. And he started taking his life forward. So like this, we have to update our maps and be very mindful of the sources of information. What consciousness are they operating from? We don't need any more fear narrative. Come to a place where you can process all of this and make the most out of this time.
Nitya, what does one do if one gets overwhelmed though? Let's say you have a relative who is, who's suffering at this point and maybe suffering in a way that, is critical or, you're worried for their safety because that is the reality, right, for so many families today. How does one deal with that level of anxiety? So I completely get what you're saying about the general ambient anxiety, the fact that, there is suffering all around us. And even if we aren't directly impacted, if we want to have an open heart and yet have equilibrium, then the answer is to go through that experience by fully experiencing it across many levels. And perhaps adding the insight which you shared that of the impermanence of, of many things in life, probably you're going to say all. So, with that sort of understanding and the actual experience. But what do you do if you're in it, where, let's say you have a parent or a family member or a loved one who needs help and things may not be looking good. How do you maintain your equilibrium when the anxiety is that high?
Just feel don't even get attached to the idea of equilibrium. If you're going to feel grief, feel grief. If you're going to feel panic, feel panic. If you're going to feel anxious, feel anxious. Allow yourself, this whole thing of trying to put up a face of being stronger than we are, not required. When strong, serve. When weak, surrender. And I have allowed myself sometimes to break down and cry. I've sometimes reached out to my friends when I felt that I can't do it. This whole image of being a know-it-all or having all the answers, it's not required. So when you're really weak, then allow yourself to be weak and reach out. There is plenty of help available. Just yesterday in one of my groups, I'm running a course, and someone shared, one of the methods I teach them is something called tapping. This is actually a good method for people to learn. Go online, search for tapping or search for EFT. That's not electronic funds transfer. That's emotional freedom techniques. And so I taught this method a few days back, and somebody shared in the group how she began doing this for her son, who she felt she was holding back because she was afraid of how, somehow she thought he's not bold enough or whatever. How is my friend going to manage? And she just tapped on herself. Her son was sleeping in the other room. And he woke up and he said, Mom, I had a dream. I had a dream where you were just setting me free. I had a dream where you were just letting me do what I wanted. You let me fly. And she's like, what? I was in my room doing this, and you had a dream in the other room? What I'm trying to say here is we are not as helpful as we imagine. Your relatives who are going through whatever, your thoughts and your emotions have an impact on them. We are all deeply, profoundly connected. So it's not just about providing hospital beds and medicine and all of that. I think if anything we should learn from this whole experience is it's much more than just the hygiene factors of your environment. It's also about how connected we are to the community. And I think a lot of families are grieving because they're not able to connect. Like the loved ones that are in hospital, they're not allowed to meet them. And these people who otherwise might have recovered faster with a little bit of love and support and attention are just left all alone all day long. And of course, that's so scary for anybody, right? And how come we've completely taken out the emotional element of someone holding your hand? Someone told me the other day they went through a really bad, with oxygen, you sometimes get delirium. She's going through delirium, and they think that's normal. But one nurse went and held her hand. For 1 hour, she held her hand. She said, I could feel that. That gave me strength and support, right? So we're looking at it at a very basic level, just make people survive somehow, just pump oxygen into them. But there's much more to this. And so each of us, in whatever way we can to equilibrate ourselves, every day, let's practice gratitude. It's not just thinking once in a while, oh, I'm grateful. You've got to practice gratitude. You've got to think it till you feel it. You've got to feel it till you become it. Every day, practice compassion. Every day, the Buddha actually says this, and some people may not like to hear this, but the Buddha says, every day visualize your old age. Every day visualize your sickness. Every day visualize your death. Every day visualize losing everyone and everything you love. Why would you do that? That sounds like a scary thing to do. Because that is the reality. The reality is most of us are going to get old. Most of us are going to get sick, and every one of us is going to die. And we're going to lose all the things we love and don't love. And what that does is it makes you see every moment as precious. This conversation is precious. It'll never happen exactly this way ever again. Those who are listening, this is the only moment of your life. Every other moment is an imagination, right? So when you start waking up to this, then a certain resilience starts coming up. You stop taking things for granted. You stop being a victim. You stop blaming. You start owning your power. And that's what it's all about. It's all about coming back to who we really are. It's about self-realization and self-actualization. In the beginning, life will give you whispers. Most of us ignore them. Then it will give us nudges in the form of emotions. Many of us will ignore them. And that's when the tight slaps start coming. And now tight slaps are coming for all of us. Human society is getting tight slaps. We've been ignoring the warnings forever. And I also want to say, why is there such a lot of emphasis only on the vaccines and the hospital beds and the oxygen? Why are we not talking about the sources of this? Our connection to each other, our connection to nature, how we treat animals, all of these things are very important. These are bigger conversations to be had, not just numbers and oxygen beds and all of that. This is super reactive. We have to think more systemically. We have to think in a broader way. And that cannot happen when you're constantly in the fear narrative. So conversations like ours are designed to help people now settle down a bit, shift from the racing head and come to the heart, and then come to the gut and inhabit your own wisdom. And that's what's really needed here, for us to embody our true nature.
Wow. Nitya, so I'm going to take 2 or 3 practical, tips out of this, that if you do have a family member who is going through an experience, and for that reason, your anxiety is particularly at a high level. I mean, I like what you first said, that when you're strong, serve, when you're weak, surrender. I hadn't actually heard it quite this way, and I think it makes sense, because it is a reality that, even if you're a caregiver, you can't do it all by yourself. You need support in many, many different ways, some of which might be, the more tangible kind of stuff like beds, oxygen, medicines. But the other is just support emotionally. And I like what you're saying, that, maybe tapping into that deeper interconnectedness, even with those who are suffering, and being able to, you gave the example of holding someone's hand. Now, that's in this particular case, that's really hard to do. It's still someone is COVID positive. So, I suppose what you mean in this context is, emotionally being there for them, maybe with your heart, if not, physically, just because that's not possible. And those are some of the ways in which, you can navigate. And of course, I also heard what you said about, almost updating the map when you spoke about the Buddha's three, fundamental truths and sort of revisiting them every day. I'm guessing that that's to remind you that, the map is not what we have built out in our imagination, but there is inherent, there are realities that sort of we don't want to necessarily visit every day.
It's also a Stoic. Even the ancient Stoics talked about negative visualization. Not only positive visualization, but also negative visualization. We should visualize the worst possible outcomes. And this actually strengthens us, gives us tremendous resilience. So it's not what a lot of people talk about these days, but it's tremendously powerful. I have visualized in great detail. In fact, this is one of the practices. You visualize in great detail your own death. You visualize in great detail your own old age. You visualize in great detail. Why would you do that? It strengthens your spirit, and it makes you detach from the cultural values of just how you look and how things are and how things are going. You come to a deeper set of values the moment you do that. Because you're aligning yourself with the truth, as opposed to aligning yourself with popular culture.
Isn't there a danger, though, with that? I mean, sorry, I just have to ask this follow-on. Like, for instance, if you're visualizing, say, sickness, and, like we say that if your mind can think of something, it can happen. And when you visualize good health, you sort of set the path for good health. So wouldn't visualizing, say, something like sickness, nudge you in that direction as well? And I'm going to take the example of, say, Ram Dass, because when he visualized himself as an old person, and he got the stroke, and he's written in his biography that he's still not clear whether he got the stroke because he was so trying to imagine or visualize himself as an old person, or someone in needing of help. So this thought, I can't help but ask you that, are there any dangers to that?
Anything done with awareness is not a problem. Very simple. Anything done with it. I can imagine anything in the world with awareness. I can watch any TV show in the world with awareness that it's a TV show. It's going to have zero impact on me. It's only when I get hypnotized by it that then the problem comes. And even in your question, notice how in your question there is fear. That what if this happens?
Yeah, there is.
You just got in touch with an unconscious, like a shadow. Like, I don't want to go there. Yeah. That should never happen. That should never happen to me. That should never happen to my loved ones. The moment you have a preference of any kind, that should never happen. This should always happen. Welcome to the matrix. Welcome to the illusion. The only way we cut out of this illusion, literally, the only way we cut out of it, is we hold the most exalted, positive, beautiful image of ourselves and the most scary, devious, confronting thoughts about ourselves, and realize they're both just thoughts. And I'm untouched by that. I am the sky within which all of these things arise and disappear, right? So Ramana Maharishi got enlightened by visualizing his own death. So yeah, so you've invited a different kind of speaker today to your thing who doesn't do the thing that
no, absolutely. I'm pretty sure we would not have.
Because it's good to have. If you're only going to hear the same old stuff every time, then what's the point? Then why are we even having this conversation? In the Cho tradition, okay, talking about pandemics, in the ancient time when there were plagues, nobody wanted to touch the dead bodies. But there was one set of people who would never hesitate to touch the dead body. This is a set of practitioners called the Cho practitioners. Why they call the Cho practitioners? What is Cho? Cho is the tradition where it's a very scary tradition in a way. You visualize yourself being eaten up by ghosts. You visualize yourself being eaten up by demons. This is the main practice. They go to cremation ground, they go to graveyards, and they invite all the ghosts, wake up, come and eat me, come and eat me. They have a skull in their head, and they go tap, tap, tap. This is the most, you can go crazy with a practice like this. You can either go crazy, or you can get completely beyond the fear of what happens to this body and mind. And these were the only practitioners who would dare to pick up these plague-ridden bodies and do whatever they would do. In those, I think in Tibet you don't cremate, but you would bury them, or you would give a sky burial where the birds and the animals would come and eat it. They were the only ones who would do that, and they would never get the pandemic. They would never get the plague, because they would say, "Come, eat me. Come, get me." The moment you welcome something, is not a problem. Your immune system shines when you say welcome, and your immune system is compromised the moment you get afraid. In America, there was a place. This has happened many times. Mass hysteria. Someone took a drink from a vending machine, and they got sick. And the news spread that vending machine is making people sick. The entire stadium got sick. They had they had ambulances rush down, and hundreds of people were transported to the hospital. Everyone got sick. Oh, that vending machine is making people sick. It was a big mass hysteria. There was nothing there. It was a big thing. How much of what's currently going on is like that? It's worth questioning. How much of what's currently going on is just mass hysteria? I'm not saying it's not happening, but to what extent are we adding to it with our fear psychosis? Something to consider.
I want to take some questions and comments. Hi, Rajiv. Hi, Gurleen. Gurleen. Hi, Shalini, and my favorite teacher, Nitya Shanti. Greetings. Well said. Love the example. Thank you, Raveen. Priyanka, lovely to meet you and Nitya virtually. Megha, amazing. Gurleen says, I'm the sky and everything else is water. Love it. Also reminds me of Tole's quote, you don't live your life, but life lives you. Life is the dancer and you're the dance.
So good.
Deep. Akshit, thanks for organizing. Papia. When we're surrounded by loss and grief, balancing our emotions becomes key. We need to be with our real-time feelings. And I think that's what you spoke about, that don't push away the feelings, be with it. And sort of the only way out is through. Are we paying attention to the whispers and nudges? Rajiv has the question. Will the conversation with our own subconscious mind, will it help to achieve peace of mind? And will it guide us for proper decision-making in tough times?
Beautiful. Yeah. In fact, my name is Nitya Shanti. Unchanging peace. So there is the peace which comes from getting what you want and no one troubling you. That's one kind of peace. But there's a deeper peace, which is the background of everything. So like right now you can hear me. It's because there's not a rock band playing behind me. If there was a rock band playing behind me, you would barely hear what I'm saying. And you can hear the rock band because there is no aeroplane taking off behind the rock band. Otherwise, you couldn't hear the rock band. And you can hear the aeroplane because there's no rocket taking place. You see, behind everything, there has to be silence. Behind what I'm saying, there's silence. And we tend to get hypnotized by what I'm saying. We tend to miss the silence. So the whole training, the whole point of all of this we're talking about is to learn to shift our attention away from the obvious to what is always there. Like when I look at the room I'm in right now, I tend to see the things in the room, but I mostly miss the space in the room. And the space in the room is always here. So the whole point of this practice is to start dehypnotizing ourselves by recognizing all of this as an appearance in our awareness, in our consciousness. And yes, in the beginning, you're going to barely get flashes of that. You're going to mostly be caught up in our thoughts and our feelings and the events of our life. But if you want to truly dehypnotize yourself, then this is a lifelong practice. It's a practice of waking up within the dream again and again. You heard of lucid dreaming, where within your nighttime dream, you say, oh, this is just a dream. This is just a dream. That's what's going to start happening in your daytime waking state. That, oh, I'm again getting hypnotized by my thinking. I'm again getting hypnotized by my patterns, by my habits. And do I really want to do this right now? You ask a question, beautiful question by Rupert Spira. He says, am I aware? Simple question, am I aware? And like this, you start waking up. And yes, the subconscious mind will then start aligning with this. Over here, my teacher, very interesting. When I became a monk, my teacher said, okay, you ordained as a monk now, but you're not truly a monk. I said, really? Why am I not truly a monk? He said, you'll become truly a monk the day you dream of yourself as a monk. It took about 8 months for the first time for me to dream of myself as a monk. In other words, consciously I was a monk, but subconsciously I'd still dream of myself as a layperson. It took me 8 months, right? So yes, your subconscious mind has to start lining up with that. And I used to distrust my own practice. I remember early days, I'd meditate, do all these retreats. My practice is not right. My practice is not right. But actually, we are very poor judges of our practice. There was a situation where someone attempted suicide, and I had to, as an 18-year-old, rush them to hospital, figure out the doctors, figure out the financing, call everybody. And I was amazed. I was the coolest person over there. All the adults were frazzled. I was the cool one, making decisions, organizing the car, organizing the finances, making phone calls, talking to the doctors. And I was amazed at myself. Where did the strength come from? And I realized we are very poor judges of our own practice. We don't know how deep or shallow our practice is. And it's exactly situations like this that is now giving us a litmus test of where we are, where we stand. And it's not good or bad. It's just an opportunity. Take note of it and now continue, right? It's not about judgment. Life is not vindictive. It's corrective. It's an opportunity for us. And so that's what I would say. Yes, it is very much about coming in alignment with your truth. And that becomes a compass which guides your life.
Are difficult circumstances actually almost I mean, are they ideal opportunities for the kind of like insights you're speaking about, or does the fear and our own anxiety sort of come in the way?
We have to ask ourselves to what extent. I have a different definition for wisdom. Wisdom is intolerance for suffering. Most of us have a very high threshold of tolerance for suffering. We tolerate all kinds of nonsense. We tolerate negative thinking all day long. We tolerate complaining. We tolerate such a lot of shit, actually. And wisdom is a very low tolerance for this kind of stuff. It's like, when my cloth, I have even a little bit of stain, I refuse to wear this shirt. Sorry, I can't wear it. A little bit of stain, a little bit of tear, a little bit of dirt in my food. Sorry, you can't eat this food. It's got dirt in it. Why don't we have that same level of hygiene for our thinking? So difficult things will come. Like I like Kabir saying, I know your husband also Kabir. Kabir says that dukh mein sab simran kare, sukh mein kare na koi, jo sukh mein simran kare, dukh kahe ko hoye. So in your good times, in your pleasant times, in your healthy times, do this practice. And then automatically in the difficult times, it will be taken care of. And don't be like the majority of people who wait till the shit hits the fan and then they start grappling around, what do I do? It's too late. When you're drowning and sinking, it's too late to learn swimming at that time. Then you'll be lucky if someone throws you a little ring, a little floating ring for you to hang on to, right? And that's fine. That's also fine. When we're drowning, we should reach out for the floating ring. But the time is now, when most of you are healthy, when situations are relatively okay. That's the time to start practicing the things I'm talking about. Practice gratitude, practice mindfulness, reflect on your deeper values. Ask yourself what the purpose of your life is. Because people of all ages, people in my family, people younger than me have died. Someone just in his 30s recently died in my family, in my extended family. So you see, anybody can go at any time. So if we can go at any time, why are we still caught up in the same old rigmarole? It's time to update our operating system. It's time to really reevaluate what's important. So this is that opportunity.
So let me ask you a question then, which is not about the pandemic, Nitya, but about the fact that, we are entering a world where there is going to be much faster change than we've ever experienced before. Technology is perhaps the key driver, but technology along with globalization and many other trends are going to create much faster change than, we've experienced, at least in our lifetimes and perhaps ever. So when so much around us is changing, relationships, careers, the world around us is changing. Are there any one or two simple practices? I know you've mentioned a few: mindfulness, sitting with your feelings, becoming aware of them. Are there any one or two other things that someone can do to help manage their own anxiety about change? Because that's going to be a key competence for all of us. We are going to face far more change over the next, say, 10 years or so. And to be able to navigate that change, part of it is just managing our own fears and anxiety. So anything that you would suggest as something you've seen really helpful?
Well, number one is start your day with gratitude. So do a lotus of gratitude, put your fingers like this, and think of 10 things you're grateful for every morning. Then you open a finger each time, open a lotus petal each time. And when all 10 open, come to your heart. This would be the first simple practice. Start every day by thinking of 10 things, forcing yourself to think of 10 amazing things in your life. This would be the first simple practice.
That's a nice one. Very nice one.
The other one is a resource I created 2 or 3 years back. I was suddenly inspired to, in fact, I was inspired by a person called Benjamin Bennett, who just on YouTube, he sits with open eyes and a smile for 4 hours. He doesn't say anything. He just puts on the video camera, sits with the open eyes and smile. And he's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I said, what is this guy? And video after video, 4 hours straight. In fact, one video, he forgot to take a leak before. He even peed in place without even getting up. I said, so cool. So I said, I'm going to do something similar, not 4 hours, but I said every day for half an hour, I will teach anything that's coming to me. So if you go to YouTube and type intensity and my name, Nitya Shanti, you'll get 50 videos, 50 intense guided meditations, half an hour each. That's a great resource. Check it out. It's free of cost. Everybody can do it. And then beyond that, if you really want to see more than these little quick tips and all of that, go deeper into your experience. So I have made a 6-month course. That's a paid course. It's on my, I can give the link to you. It's on Teachable. And it's a meditation course over 6 months where I share all the best learning that I have about meditation, different kinds of meditation, the principles, the practices. And pretty much everyone who's done this has told me what a huge benefit it's been to them. And they've gone back and revisited it. So start with these 3 things. Start with Lotus of Gratitude. Check out my free intensity series on YouTube, 50 guided meditations. And then if you want, sign up for my 6-month meditation course.
In fact, I'm a part of your lucid living course. So just saying. It's really
And
helpful.
belucid.in, that's another one. That's actually a free resource. I've made that free now. So there
Is
there
it?
are, yeah, I've made it free. Anybody can sign up. And there are all kinds of talks and guided meditations, and even long practices are there, 3-hour practices and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff. The main thing is make it a priority, make it important, make yourself important. And let's shift from being reactive to being responsive. Let's activate our response ability, our ability to respond in the situation. How do you do that? Between stimulus and response is a gap. Access that gap, which is why I say love the silence. We have to, the basic shift in consciousness has to be from loving things and events and people to loving life itself and letting life move through you, right? It's a really important, significant shift. And like I said, life has been whispering to us and nudging us, and now there's no choice. So either we do this, we make that upgrade, or we literally are going to perish. Like you said, change is coming, nothing can stop it from coming. So my main practice as a monk was about change, anicca. Anicca is constant change. Thoughts are changing. Smells are changing. Sounds are changing. Feelings are changing. Everything is changing. When everything is changing, what security do you have? You actually don't have a security. You can't save yourself. You're in trouble. So what do you have? Change itself is your security. Change is the only thing which doesn't change. So it's the biggest paradox of all. You make change your foundation. In one night, my teacher snapped me out. I was meditating nicely in my monastery in Sri Lanka. He said, tomorrow you have to go to Kuala Lumpur. I said, why do I have to go to Kuala Lumpur? This monk is having a visa issue. And overnight, I was taken out of my serene monastery in Sri Lanka and popped into the middle of a busy town, Kuala Lumpur. I was there for 2 weeks. And I was waiting for a reaction in my mind, but there was none. Why? Because my whole practice is about change. So of course there's going to be change. So around me, suddenly the city has changed. The people have changed. The food has changed. The expectations have changed. What's happening has changed. So make change your foundation. Then you'll not be shocked by change. Of course it's going to change. And you become one with life in this way. So the whole idea is shifting from speed of thought to speed of life. How do you move to speed of life? Breath by breath, gratitude by gratitude, moment by moment, cherishing each experience, including the one we're having right now.
So Nitya, actually, I'm gonna continue on this thought. How do you then? I mean, because part of embracing change is, refinding yourself again and again, because whatever, particularly your ideas of how you were going to live your life out. Given the fact that we're going to see so much change over the next, say, decade, and from there on. A lot of ideas we have about how our professional career or personal careers are going to, evolve, would need to be sort of changed very regularly. So do you have any guidelines on, is there a way to find or be especially in touch with your inner compass so that you have the ability to keep sort of, finding the new you, so to say, in a new situation?
One of the best things I did was interview myself 5 minutes before I was going to die. And I interviewed 2 versions of myself. It's called The 5 Wishes. It comes from Gay Hendricks. It's a book by Gay Hendricks called The 5 Wishes. And he invites you to interview a version of yourself that lived a very unfulfilling, unsuccessful life, and ask that version of yourself, how come your life was such a failure, so unsuccessful, so distraught? And you make notes. And then you go and interview a version of yourself that's about to die, but it had the most fulfilling, beautiful, miraculous, successful, gorgeous life. So what made your life so successful? And based on both these answers, you come up with your 5 most important values, right? And it's got 2 levels. It's got the inner aspect of qualities, and got the outer aspect of accomplishments. So I can quickly share mine. So my inner qualities, the 5 most important qualities for me in this lifetime are awareness, love and compassion, gratitude, letting go, and joyful service. So these 5 are my inner values. I try to orient my decision making based on these values. Whatever helps me grow in awareness, love and compassion, gratitude, letting go, and being in touch with my joyful serving nature, that for me would be a priority. This is the one aspect. The second aspect is what I want to accomplish in life. And for me, 5 things came out of this. I want to have deep, fulfilling, intimate relationships. I want to leave behind a body of teachings that profoundly touches and impacts lives even after I'm gone. I want to create conscious community. I want to have places and spaces that people can practice these things. And I want to be fully self-realized and as fully self-actualized as possible. These are my 5 so-called accomplishments that I want. And it's a process. And I keep revisiting my 5 qualities and my 5 wishes. My life tends to be much more in alignment. And not just thinking of it once in a while, thinking of it often. And checking, is my day-to-day in alignment with these 5? And if it's not, then why is it not? What's happening? Where am I getting hypnotized? Where am I getting lost? And you keep on reorienting. But the good thing is, when a plane is on autopilot, 99.9% of the time, it's going in the wrong direction. But 100% of the time, it comes to the right destination. And why is that? It is constantly autocorrecting. It goes to the left, it goes to the right, it keeps on autocorrecting. So we're going to be wrong most of the time. Dogen Zenji, great Zen master, said, life is one continuous mistake. Mistakes, this whole idea of perfectionism is nonsense. Forget about perfectionism. Focus on connection. Focus on depth. Focus on opening your heart. Focus on failing forward. And like this, we make the most of what we have. That would be one.
I think that's a very practical tool, actually. I mean, to use a practice, you shared your practice, and I think it's a really nice one of, interviewing 2 selves of yours with different outcomes, and then thinking about, what are my 5 deepest values and 5 deepest, what is it I want to accomplish in this world? And then that becomes your inner compass. So when the external world is changing, you keep sort of using that compass to, as you said, go on the next wrong direction before you course correct. So there's a question here from Sonika. I have a question, and it's mystic how this came across on a day I'm so low. Hi, Sonika. In these times of grief, when so many people are dying, the grief of loss from the death of my twin sister and my father that happened 3 years ago is now pushing me on the brink. Few days are very, very hard. How do I manage grief? It's overwhelming.
Yeah. So powerful, Sonika. Thank you for sharing this in a public forum. And the reason we have grief, there are 2 things. So one is, of course, what is grief? Grief is neural pruning. What is neural pruning? All the connections, synaptic connections you'd made with that person are now going through a shift. That's really painful. When a relationship ends, when we lose a pet, when we lose a loved one, then there's neural pruning that happens. Or even then you had an image of yourself, you thought you're going to get that job and you don't get that job. Or whatever it is, that's neural pruning. So neural pruning is by nature going to be uncomfortable. This is the first thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually a good thing you allow it to happen. Now, beyond that, we have a sense of, I've lost something forever. So what my teacher made me do is that he would say, okay, this person has died. What did this person mean to you? What qualities did they have? Well, they were very loving. They were very fun to be with. They were always supporting me. I could go to them for advice. And you make a list of qualities that they had. And you ask yourself, is it really true that with this person's passing, these qualities have forever disappeared in my life? That love is absent in my life. Getting good counsel is absent in my life. People caring for me is absent in my life. A warm touch of a human hand is absent in my life. If you look very carefully, it is not absent. Bodies can die, qualities never die. In fact, it's a common phenomenon. We all know this. When one person in our family dies, suddenly the whole world shows up. Neighbors show up, relatives show up, friends show up. And what one powerful source of love disappeared, 100 other people compensated for that. Yes, it looks temporary, but nevertheless, it's there, right? So qualities never die. The first time you go to an airport and they ask you to check your luggage in, you're very suspicious. Why would you take my luggage? I don't even know you. I don't trust you. And the co-passengers say, hey, listen, don't worry. It's fine. Just give them your luggage. You'll get to the other airport. So with great suspicion, you hand over your luggage because you think you're losing it forever. But then you're surprised to find at the other airport, you get your luggage. And now a new confidence comes. So when you and I have a very limited idea of life and we only see life at a physical level, then there is no choice but to be broken down and to grieve. And that is necessary for you to wake up to a larger dimension. When I travel the second time, I happily give my luggage away. I even say, can you please allow 5 kilos more? Please take it. I don't want to carry this onto the airplane. Because you know that baggage is traveling with you in the same plane, but just in a place out of sight. So until we upgrade our notion of what are these loved ones, are they just that physical body? Then, nothing can help you until you realize that they're more than that physical body. They embody certain qualities. And they're basically consciousness itself. And until that upgrade happens, we are bound to be broken. Right? Now, I don't know if that can happen for you right now. Allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself to feel the pain and let it move through you. I know it seems like it's never going to end, but it is going to end and a larger light is going to come. In fact, when people die, they're actually far more with us. Isn't it true? Like people who are alive, we don't think of them that often, but the moment they die, we think of them almost all the time. So that in a way, they're actually far more present with you at all times. So like this, we have to ask ourselves, what have I really lost? And we don't really lose anyone, we return them. They come from somewhere, they go to somewhere. This is the way, we are on this train of life. Different people get off at different platforms. Different people get off at different stations. So that's how I would contemplate it. I would reflect on their qualities. I would invite those qualities, embody those qualities, recognize the way they are already present in my life. And you realize, actually, you have not lost anything. And that recognition will come, and I hope it comes to you sooner rather than later. Lots of love, Sonika.
Well, I don't even know what to say to that, Nitya. I mean, it reminds me of the whole idea that, some people say so-and-so has left their physical body instead of died, but their presence is still there. And sounds like what you're saying is that the moment we sort of shift our perspective to that and think of the person not as the physical embodiment, but the qualities that they represent, then, whether or not they're with us in physical presence, they stay with us. And you're saying that...
Yeah, go ahead. Please finish. Yeah.
And you're saying that part of managing grief, because that was going to be actually my next question, that what do we do when so many people are genuinely grieving because they've lost a loved one? And part of it is what you said, let the grief go through you, but grieve. Because that's the time when, your brain is rewiring around a very painful incident. And the other part is what you said about, just being aware that they've left you in one form, but not in another. And they're with you. Any other tips you have for people who are grieving? Because so many people are grieving. I mean, every day, I have thousands of people who are passing away, even officially.
I have a friend here in Pune, Reena Jinwala. She's a facilitator. And I asked her once, what is her... I often ask these kind of questions to people. So I said, what is your main purpose in life? And I was shocked to hear when she said, my main purpose in life is to grieve and to help other people grieve. I'd never heard an answer like that. People talk about, touching lives and making a difference. She said, no, I'm here to grieve. And I'm here to help others. I said, why would you focus on grieving? She said, because there's so much we have not grieved about. Each one of us. Promises we made to ourselves, we've not grieved, and we didn't keep those promises, right? Promises we made to others and we've not kept them. Hopes and dreams that never came true. The childhood idealism that we've lost. And of course, loved ones and all of that. And I was amazed to find that she has made her life purpose supporting people in grieving. It's not a bad thing to grieve. In fact, today's Facebook post is also about, I put about grieving and gratitude. Both are required. Grieving is required, gratitude is required. And to hold this very strange polarity within us. Grieving deeply and being profoundly grateful at the same time, right? So there is a culture of toxic positivity and compulsive positivity in our world. And what's happening now is part of the correction. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to be broken. Because when a seed breaks, it sprouts. Something in us has to give. Something in us has to break. Your old sense of who you were and what your world is has to break. And the more gracefully you can allow it to break, the more beautifully you will blossom into the next stage of your life. So yes, old dreams are going to go. It's not fun. It's super painful. And you bring it on. See, pain is inevitable in life. Suffering is not inevitable. Suffering is optional. Suffering comes from arguing with reality. Shouldn't have happened. Why did it happen? But it happened. It shouldn't have happened, but it happened. What are you going to say? Suffering is arguing with reality. When you argue with reality, you lose 100% of the time, says Byron Katie. I love that quote. Right? So one thing I wanted to say is, physical pain, we all know. I touched something sharp, that hurt. Shouldn't have touched that. Touch something hot, shouldn't have touched that. Hurt. Right? Physical pain says, don't do that. It's hurting you. What are you doing? Don't sit like that. Don't walk like that. Don't bend like that. Don't pick it up in that way. It's hurting. It's bad for you. Physical pain is very important. I met a man in the US who had a very rare neurological disorder where he cannot feel physical pain. And you think, wow, what a gift. Turns out it's a curse. Because he cannot, like when he puts a shower on, he doesn't know if it's hot or cold. He can burn himself badly. He wouldn't even realize. He doesn't realize when he has to pee. He has to go by a clock when to pee and when to shit. Because he doesn't feel the pain of peeing and shitting. It's a very dangerous life. So people often don't live very long. They die. So pain is a very important feedback mechanism. Don't do that. Don't eat that. Don't drink that. Don't be like that. It's hurting. But very few of us understand emotional pain. What is emotional pain? What I've learned from my practice is emotional pain is telling me, don't believe that thought. It's a lie. Don't believe that thought. It's hurting you. I tell you a joke, you laugh. I repeat the joke, you smile. The third time, you get irritated with me. But the same memory is making us cry year after year after year. If you wouldn't laugh at the same joke more than 3 times, why would you cry the same thought over and over and over again? because you're hypnotized by it, because you're believing it to be true. Mind, you have to realize, M-I-N-D, mostly inaccurate neurodrama. The moment you start meditating or doing any kind of spiritual practice, you realize mostly inaccurate neurodrama. This is nonsense. Most of the time, it's just nonsense. All kinds of garbage is coming, and I'm just believing it, right? So we have cultural notions of what death is. Do you realize your response to the loss of a loved one is a cultural response? You've been taught as a child. You looked up at people. Oh, they cry. Oh, they beat their chest. Oh, that's what you're supposed to do, and you began doing it yourself. There are cultures where death is celebrated. There are cultures where death is very matter of fact. Our response to death is cultural along with everything else, right? So we have to dehypnotizing ourselves like this and realizing this is a powerful opportunity to question your beliefs about life and death, right? And so I love Byron Katie's teachings, where she asks us to say, is it true? What I'm believing, is it true? Am I sure it's true? What happens when I believe this thought? Who am I without this thought? And turning it around in many, many different ways. Check out some of the books by Byron Katie. Check out this one, 1,000 Names for Joy by Byron Katie. Powerful book. She had a spontaneous awakening when she was very depressed. And after 12 years of deep depression, she had a spontaneous awakening. She had no spiritual background. So her teachings come from a rather clean place. There's no baggage of spirituality and religion. So like this, I invite people to take their current situation, including the emotional pain they're facing, as an opportunity to upgrade their operating system, their way of looking at life. If you take it like that, you start reorienting, updating your map of reality. This becomes one of the best times of your life. It's an opportunity. And those of us who take it will experience it. I know a minority of us will take it. Most of us are going to cry and be sad. But the ones who are listening to this program, I think, are among that minority, which is why I'm taking the effort to speak to all of them.
Wow. I think our conversation today, Nitya, is going to get two very different kinds of responses. That's my sense. Payal has a question. How does one begin with the process of being comfortable with silence or nothingness? How does one begin this journey?
So first of all, silence. Yeah, first of all, silence is not a lack of anything. Like, I've been meditating for how many years? From the age of 16, I've been meditating. I've been meditating a long time, right? I don't have to disclose my age, so I won't say how many years. So, and I've been meditating for a long time. And even now, when I meditate, there are thoughts. But the beauty is, I know the thoughts to be thoughts. Like my stomach will digest, my brain will think. And it's not personal, right? It's thoughts without a thinker. I did not choose those thoughts. They're just finding themselves. So to get in touch with silence is to realize that I'm the space within which thoughts arise, within which emotions arise, within which life events arise. In fact, I'm not a face in the world. I'm space for the world. How do I know that? Because I can see my hands, I can see my shoulders just barely, but I can't see my own face. What's unique about every organism in this world is they can't see their own face. In other words, they are not a face. They are a space. I'm not a face. I'm a space. I'm a space in the world. I'm space for the world. So you get in touch with silence by realizing that is the foundation, that is the backdrop on which everything else is happening. So when you meditate or when you do any practice, even when you're cooking your food, become a presence. Instead of being a person cooking food, be a presence that's cooking the food or making the food. Right now, instead of Nitya Shanti teaching, I'm always surprised by what comes out of my mouth, and I trust it. Sometimes it goes this direction, sometimes it goes that direction, and I just trust it because I'm not here trying to get you to believe in me or follow me. Or I'm not interested in followers. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm just interested in showing up. And I show up, and whatever gifts are there will shine through, and it'll touch whoever it needs to touch. In other words, this is a presence. So shift from personality view to presence view, personality view to process view. And silence is not absolute silence, no thoughts, no emotions. It's the backdrop on which everything is happening. It's the screen on which this life and this universe is projected. And the more you start identifying yourself with that screen, with that silence, with that consciousness, with that awareness, this is what all spiritual traditions are pointing us to. It's your untouched nature. It's the part of you that is unaffected by the ups and downs of life. The more you get in touch with that, even briefly, don't underestimate the power of even one glimpse, a micro moment, a glimpse of that. It completely starts a revolution inside of you. And nothing can stop this from rolling all the way to completion. Like a ball of wool, when you roll it, it'll roll until the ball disappears. Where did the ball go? Where did the ball go? There was never a ball. It was only wool. Ball was an ocean. So this idea I'm living life is a notion. There is no I living life, there's just life. And there's life doing its life thing. And the more we get in touch with that, we start losing our apprehensions and fears. We dehypnotize ourselves of all the illusions of being a person in the world.
There's a question from DK Bakshi. Hi, thank you for joining us. My question is that while you really get into a calm situation of life with compassion and care, but then there's suddenly again something devastating happening, which is turbulent. At this stage, what is that one can still be calm and compassionate irrespective of all odds, though I believe in it and I do it, but is it tough at tough times? Kindly throw some light. I think you mentioned bits of this earlier, but maybe it all comes together now.
We can say that yeah, things get better, then again there's a catastrophe, things get better, then again. It's almost like, what are you focusing on? It's like saying, yeah, sunlight is there, but then again there's darkness. Yeah, but then again there's darkness. You could say that, but also sunlight is like day is there, like night is there, but then again there's the dawn. It's a matter of how you're holding it. Are you holding the frying pan from the hot side or the cold side? The Buddha says there are 4 kinds of people in the world. The first is running from darkness to darkness. Second is running from light to darkness. Third is running from darkness to light. And the fourth is running from light to light. So what does it mean? Darkness to darkness is current situation. Circumstances are very unpleasant, very unhelpful, really troublesome. People are unhealthy in the family, lost your job, all of that. It's dark. And on top of that, you are full of anger and blame and frustration and helplessness. Future is also dark. Darkness to darkness. Second one, outwardly things are good. You're in good health, family is good, everything's good. But inwardly, there is worry, or there is fear, or there is comparison, or there is judgment, or there is blame. Future is very dark. It happens a lot. We have everything, and yet we ruin it, right? Third one is darkness to light. Right now, circumstances are very difficult in your finances, in your health, in your relationships, in your everything. But inwardly, this too shall pass. This is not here to break me. This is here to make me. And if I submit to this, like I said earlier, when strong serve, when weak surrender. And say, I don't know why this is happening. I can't understand it, but take me through this. And you will be taken through it. Ask for help. Just use that one word, help. And help will come. Help is always there. You've got to ask for it. If you think you're going to go do it all yourself, it's going to be much harder for you. Open yourself up. In my spiritual practice, I reached a point where I literally broke down. Because my self-power wasn't taking me any further. I tried everything. And about in my 4th year of being a monk, I just literally broke down. I just couldn't meditate. I was literally spiritually burnt out. And that's the point. I had to just say, help, support me. And help came. It came in the most unexpected, most beautiful ways. And my practice shifted from a wisdom-based practice to more of a bhakti or surrender-based practice. And my ego had to be ground down, the sense of I am the meditator. I am the one who wants to be a monk. I am the one who wants to get enlightened. That spiritual ego had to be crushed before further progress could happen. So it's all right. So you surrender. And the fourth one is from light to light. Right now, things are going well. You don't take them for granted. You use your power, your strength, your finances, your everything to support those who are going through a hard time. And like this, you're grateful, you're thankful, you're not taking things for granted. Your future is also very, very bright. Dukh mein sab simran kare, sukh mein kare na koe. Jo sukh mein simran kare, dukh kahe ko hoye. So in the bright times also you do your practice. You double down on practice. And the future is going to be very bright. So we want to be like the third and fourth kind of person. We can't control the darkness and the light in our life. But we want to be like the third and fourth kind of person. All the things I've talked about today, and even if I haven't talked about it, you know it. The reason you like what I said is because you knew it. Otherwise, you would not like it. You already know these things. I'm not here to teach things. I'm here to remind people of what they already know. And they've somehow forgotten. That's all it is. So come back to that. Be like the third and fourth kind of person.
Beautiful. Last question from Varun. How do I deal with the fact that I constantly look for justice and get enraged when I find that there's only injustice, where I feel dharma is actually losing? Everyone is always taking sides.
We say incurable. Incurable means curable on the inside. Injustice, look for the justice on the inside. The reason there's injustice is we're looking at it from a very specific point of view. We're looking at, like, for example, it rains. Rain is a neutral event. For a farmer, it's good news. For someone about to go on a picnic, it's really bad news. Pandemic is terrible news for most of us, but there are certain industries that are just minting money right now. Right? There are certain industries, if you're selling masks, you're selling oxygen, you're selling drugs, you're just minting money right now, right? So nothing is by itself good or bad. Thinking makes it so. It's all a matter of which vantage point are you looking from. So what I have learned is, at least for a little while in the day, to get in touch with a point of view which has got no agenda, no preference. And just because sometimes, as a child, I might have been upset. Like, for example, very interesting, I never wanted to learn driving. I was convinced I'm going to die in a car accident. And my mother pushed me to drive. And she pushed me, and I had to learn to drive. So today I can actually drive. In fact, I've got a very nice car now. I drive wherever I like. But my mother pushed me. I did not want to do that, right? So sometimes we are pushed in a direction we don't want to go. We grow maximum on the border of support and challenge. Yesterday's solutions are today's problems. Do we really know what true justice is? Do we really know? Aren't we just conditioned by ideas of how things should be, could be, would be? So I believe there is a deeper order in this world, which always our thinking mind cannot get. I like to go with the assumption, and I know it's an assumption, but it's my assumption, that not a single atom in the universe is in the wrong place. Everything is happening exactly the way it should. There's a story of a woman who used to feed a hunchback. Every day she'd make bread. She'd make bread for her family. She'd made one extra piece of bread, and she put it on the window, and the hunchback would take it, and he never thanked her. And he would just grumble, 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 and go away. This went on for many years. And one day she was in a bad mood. She was this horrible hunchback. He never once has thanked me for the bread I make for him. I'm done with him. And that day she puts poison into the bread that was made for him. And she puts the bread over there. And the last minute she has a change of consciousness. She said, oh, forget it. Why would I kill this guy for this? She takes away that poisonous bread and puts the proper bread she made for herself. And the guy again takes the bread. He goes away grumbling, grumbling, grumbling. That evening, something amazing happens. Her son, who had been forcibly taken into the army 10 years back, who she thought had literally died, he'd never written back. He comes home. He's so thin, he's emaciated, she can barely recognize him. Turns out, her son had survived the war and was coming home, but he was so tired and exhausted, he collapsed a kilometer away from the village. He was probably going to die. And a hunchback came grumbling, grumbling, and said, looks like you need this bread more than me. And he gave the bread. And I ate that bread. It gave me just enough energy to come back home. And the reason I tell this story is that there are far deeper connections. We don't know what we are doing to whom at what time. This world is a very miraculous place. And so everything is in balance. It may not always appear like that, but at a deeper level, in my deepest practice, I realize it looks like I'm talking to Shalini or I'm talking to all of you. But I'm actually only talking to myself. Even in reality, I'm sitting in this room. If somebody else, what's wrong with you, Nitya? You're talking to a machine. I'm only talking to myself. I'm only working with myself. At the deepest level of realization, you find there is no other. Everything you're doing to yourself. If you study NDE, near-death experience, a common thread across cultures, across religions, across places in the world, when people die, their entire life flashes before their eyes. And the hurtful thing they've done to others, it is so painful to them because they realize they did it to themselves. And the helpful thing they did to others, it is so blissful, they realize they did it to themselves. We are only doing things to ourselves. So you don't have to believe me with this. You can continue to be enraged. That is also a level of consciousness. Maybe you have to go through that right now. You can be enraged, you can be an activist, you can do all of that. And then at the right time, when it's meant to be, you will come to realize that there's a deeper order over here. Nothing's out of order, nothing's out of place. It is all designed. What if these things that are enraging you are precisely what is needed for you to finally wake up from the hypnotic trance of your righteous ideas, what should and shouldn't be? How come you're so sure that life should be according to your idea of life? How come you're not humble enough to trust that there could be a deeper order to this? The universe, scientists tell us, is 13.8 billion years old. You and I are what, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old? How come we are so convinced we know everything about life? We don't know everything about life. A certain amount of humility is required. And if we don't have that humility, then our inner being is going to burn us. And that's the burning you're experiencing. If you hold it in the right way, it becomes powerful compassion. And this is the power. My teacher told me that you have to love not only the oppressed, you have to love the oppressor. And if you can't do that, you cannot create real change in this world. That's what Gandhiji did. While he disagreed with the British, he never hated the British. And we need to learn that as well.
Thanks, Nitya. I realize we're at the end of the hour, but is there some message that you want to leave viewers with on how to make it through this time as skillfully as possible?
Let's see what's coming. I mean, the message that's coming is, don't take yourself so seriously. My parents actually stopped watching news and started watching comedy shows. Enough of news. And every day they watch comedy. I send them comedy YouTube videos and stuff. So let's remember to laugh and smile. Let's not get so hypnotized by what's happening. Hasiba, Kheliba, Dhariba Dhyanam. Goraknath said, I shall laugh, I shall play, and I shall meditate. For me, that's the highest philosophy of life. What we cried about in school, we laughed about in the school reunion. What we cried about at work, we laughed about at our farewell. What we're crying about now, a time will come and we laugh and we'll be grateful for it. Hasiba, Kheliba, Dhariba Dhyanam. Laugh and play and meditate, and whatever limited time we have here, go through it in as graceful and joyful a way as possible. Burn bright. Let the little light in your heart. What's that little song? This little light of mine, I'm going to
let it shine.
I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. So get in touch with your little light and let it shine. And don't let the so-called darkness of the world crowd you out. Get in touch with your lights. And that would be the last message I want to share with everybody.
Oh, beautiful. So I'm not going to add anything to that. I just loved the conversation today, Nitya. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone who joined us today. If you think any of this conversation is going to be helpful to anyone who's going through a difficult time, please share this video with them or share the LinkedIn event page. We'd love for as many people as possible to hear some of Nitya's insights, because I think for the right people who are open to some of these, it's going to perhaps really help them make it through what is generally being experienced as a very, very difficult time. So with that, thank you very much. And we'll be back next week again with a show on happiness and what it means to be happy when things are as difficult as they are at this point. Have a great weekend and see you next week then. Bye for now. Thanks.